Take charge of the entire workshop. David?
Mr. Merritt, I think this is the workshop you called. You want to get us kicked off?
I'm sorry. Summer?
I'll go ahead and kick it off. In 2017, the board adopted some very general, limited standards as they relate to architectural design requirements for areas within the Crawfordville Town Plan. And as part of that, staff presented an administrative regulation that contained several design standards to be applied to new commercial structures within the town plan area. Staff worked with our continuing service contractor, CRA, on this process, and we have Greg Kelly and Brian Yarbrough here who were very instrumental in helping put this together. They have a brief PowerPoint to go over the standards as currently drafted and can answer any questions and take any input from the commissioners and the citizens in attendance tonight.
Greg, if people in the audience, if they have a question, can they just ask?
Absolutely.
Okay. Jerry's going to have a lot of questions.
So with that being said, I will turn the floor over to Greg and Brian.
Again, Greg Kelly with CRA Architects. We thank you for the opportunity. We see this as a working document right now. We're looking for input. We have made our first try at it, and we'd like for everybody to, pitch in and help us out so we've got something everybody's good going forward with when it's that time. So with that said, first we talk a little bit about the existing character of the downtown Crawfordville. We got some historic structures there, the courthouse, the old courthouse, and then we start looking at, besides these historic, we look at some other significant buildings around and other buildings in the community. Another picture we got there is Talcon Electric. A lot of people seem to like that building. We put that in there. We've got pictures. If there's something that you like, fine. If there's something you disagree with, let us know. We'll strike them too. So just talking a little bit about the current identity of the city, the county. Any questions or comments here?
Well, I noticed you took out the jail. Since your second paragraph in your second section is aspirational in the future character, having the jail in there just destroyed the whole concept with me. Having Talcon, much better concept. Beavis Funeral Home, much better concept. Well, I guess it's not Beavis anymore.
But understand, yeah.
Sheriff's knew what he's done with that house there. That's a much better concept. And so getting rid of the jail helped me out a lot.
Okay. All right, so we're starting out okay. All right, let's see here. Future character. We talk a little bit about the character of historic structures, even though the architectural style is that of a bygone era. It should still have influence in the way the future development is constructed. The architectural style might not be required to be the basis of the future buildings, but must be the design. They will, however, restrict and guide future building heights, forms, etc., which will be described in the following sections.
Okay, I had an issue with that picture.
Okay.
Okay. It looks like the jail.
Okay.
Okay. The one on the end, I like that one, but the rest of them just look like metal-fronted buildings.
Okay.
Now, if there's structure there, we need to see some structure on it because what you're trying to do is tell people what to design.
Right.
Okay.
Right. We'll make some changes there. Okay. You're going to see me looking at my guy, making sure he's making notes. Yeah.
Patty, can we dim the lights? Is there, oh, that's it.
All right. Height. We like to limit things at 3 stories, which is the height of the courthouse. We'd like that to be the maximum there. If you're going to propose a building, we'd like it to relate to the structures around it. We'd like for it to be to extend no more than 1 story above a adjacent facility. There we go.
That's wonderful.
The proposed building structure shall be able to extend more than 1 story above the tallest adjacent structure. And then if it's an absence of an adjacent structure, we'd like, again, 3 stories is the maximum there. Questions or comments there?
What's the building code for ordinances for zoning, give maximum building height?
The ones established for the Crawfordville Town Plan for the non-residential average about 50 feet, which is in keeping with the original town plan recommendations not to exceed the county courthouse.
I don't know how keen I am on that one, Greg, because if you have a house like David's office is there and somebody wants to come build something, say 3 stories, they couldn't do it, right?
Right.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. That's not going to be able, that's going to, hurt redevelopment, I think. I mean, nobody's rushing to build 3-story buildings, but, just thinking ahead. And like anywhere downtown, everything is single story.
We could waive the adjacency requirement and just set it at 50 feet or 3 stories.
Just put the max. That's what I prefer.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'm good with that. Again, if you come up, we'll take care of it. All right. Then we just had a picture of the courthouse there. Openings and proportions. All buildings shall have a minimum 1 opening on the front of the building. We're going to establish with the front, and the front should face the highway out there.
Let's back up on that one, Greg. Let's take this Tiger Rock thing they just built not too long ago. The front of the building faces side,
Right.
right? And the part that actually faces the street does not have a door in it,
Right.
obviously, because it's the end wall of a building. And I noticed later on in your presentation, what it says right there, 60% of the facade's got to be openings, right?
Right.
In that particular case, that building wouldn't be allowed the way it sits today, correct?
Correct.
And I was just driving around briefly, looking at other buildings.
The new MacGyver flooring that was just built, that doesn't have 60% open space.
No.
No, it does not.
This is 60%, not just the front, but anything that's visible from the road.
Right.
Which could include the sides.
Right. And I don't know if the 60% may be a little high, and I understand that, I'm glad we're not doing this as an ordinance, because we can change it relatively quickly, right?
Correct.
One board meeting, we can change this, because, it's going to evolve over the years.
Mhm.
I don't know how keen I am on the 60%.
Well, there's a lot of points in here that says that it's encouraged, but it's not.
Encouraged is fine,
Yeah.
but mandated 60%, like back to the opening, that Tiger Rock building would have to have an opening.
Well, the Tiger Rock building is really a bad example, because that's an ugly building.
Yes.
Okay, it is really an ugly building, so I wouldn't want to be,
That's easy to relate to because it faces side. All right, let's take Edwin Brown's office. It's not an ugly building, but same situation. The front of the building faces to the side. The part that faces the street, when I drove by, there's 2 little windows on it because it's the side of a house, basically. Right? And I don't think anybody's going to say the Edwin Brown's building is ugly, but wouldn't even come close to meeting these
Right.
standards.
Buildings are like babies, some people think they're beautiful. You know what I mean?
Well, another one. I didn't say beautiful. I said
That building may be beautiful to the guy that built it.
I said not ugly.
Yeah.
Now, another example is the Wakulla Realty building and where the credit union is there by Winn-Dixie. That one faces sideways
Right.
also. And it has no facade facing the road at all. So I'm just trying to think, we adopt these rules, we talk about them, but how are they going to, in real life, how would they be applied?
Well, and I would point out that in some of the provisions here, that even if an opening is not providing other embellishments like faux windows could also be used to accomplish that. So it's not an actual true opening, it just gives the appearance of the opening to provide that pedestrian scale appearance.
so you don't really have to do it, you just have to make it look like there's something there.
You'd have to dress up the side facing the highway. I understand the point. I'm fine with that.
Well,
I would be fine coming in on the side if this side facing the road had some embellishments, some other features on it also.
I just want everybody, especially the audience, to understand what we're thinking about doing. And, those are real-world examples y'all can think about that couldn't be built the way they're built today.
Right. So we'll visit the 60%. Look at that.
Because there's a lot of places where the parking is going to have to, I think we want to encourage people, right, summer not to park in front of the building.
Correct.
And if they can face the building like the Tiger Rock building, the parking is in on the side, and then if you dress up the facing the highway, I think that's better than having the parking in front with a better looking building behind it. You
Well,
understand what
they
I'm saying?
dress up, make it, give the impression that it's, kind of a faux entrance type thing. And so it looks like it's part of the whole structure of the welcoming structure of the community, not just a...
The character of the streetscape there.
So let's talk about like Clay Bozeman's building he just built. How would this affect that? Because it's behind another building, kind of.
This is set up to be triggered when you are substantially improving an existing site based on the amount of impervious surface. So if you're doubling the size of a building, then bringing it up to current standards would be a simple change of use would not be triggered. So converting an existing home along Oclotney Street to be a real estate office would not necessarily trigger this. New construction and substantial redevelopment or renovation would.
Like what Clay did was add that warehouse behind. Would this rule affect that?
It could. I apologize, I don't remember the exact square footage, but just visualizing it could potentially, yeah, the new structure would have to come up to current architectural standards.
Because, what I'm saying, Greg, it's
Understand.
built behind an existing structure.
The new structure has nothing facing, so there wouldn't be anything facing the road.
You can see it from the road.
You can see the top of it. I don't know that, we're talking about the tops of the building. We're talking about what's facing the road.
Okay. Any other conversation about the front? All right, in multi-story buildings, the first floor will have the higher percentage. Faux windows, again, are allowed to count.
Greg, shouldn't that say something like in multi-story, the front shall have a higher percentage of openings than that of the upper
Okay.
level? Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's under the openings category.
Yeah. So, faux windows, again, shall count toward the required percentage. And then glazing, we're looking at not to extend more than 12 feet continuously horizontally or vertically. So, any questions here? All right.
Greg, back up, explain that to me, the glazing. Is that windows?
That's with storefront windows along the front. We want to break it up so it's just not one long continuous, and we address that a little more or touch on it again in a minute. Oops. All right, rhythm, continuous facade expression is not allowed, so we don't want just one long linear facade there. We'll break them up there. Use of horizontal elements such as canopy, awnings, precast water tables, alignment of windows and water sills, etc., to create patterns that's desirable. The building plane elevation shall be interrupted horizontally at intervals not exceeding 30 feet. So every 30 feet we want to break it up.
You talking about the roof line elevation?
No, horizontally, the building. So the
Jog in and out.
Yep. So you just don't have, again, one long front there. You want to break it up.
Okay.
And those intervals need to be at least 2 foot wide and shall be 6 inches deep or recessed. So we're breaking it up a little bit in and out also.
So if somebody wanted to build a building that's 100 feet wide, at it from the road.
We're going to break it up into increments.
So something like a Tractor Supply, for example, they would have to have.
Yeah, and they typically do something in and out a little bit, so.
Well, like that building they're renovating across from Blue Sink there, they're kind of,
Right.
that was just one open
Yep.
face before, and
Yep,
now.
that's
a lot of
a
architectural
real
design.
good example of what we're talking about there. Yep. The ground level of the building shall provide grade level access at the streets, so. All right. Again, under openings, the entrance, typically commercial establishments use recess entries in their storefronts. This provides a shelter entry as well as more actual display windows. For doors that swing outward, this prevents them from opening onto the sidewalks. Therefore, recess entrances are encouraged. Each entrance to a building needs to be unique and reflect the character and function of it while respecting the adjacent buildings.
So the way I read that, if you got two doors in one building, those two doors have to be separate, even though it's one business, one building? They couldn't make the same door if they got two openings, two entrances?
We could work something out there. Yes.
I would think I can understand if it's a row of offices and they're separate, that each one of those be different, but it seems like within the same unit, it could be the same.
Yeah,
if they had two doors.
we can work something there.
So you're talking about like, what? Give me examples.
Well, I mean, if you had a longer building, a 100-foot building, and you got a doorway on both sides, or like Walmart, for example, we would require Walmart to have two sets of doors. They're different from each other, and they have the exact same doors at each end of the building.
Gotcha.
But we could recess them and do whatever.
We want to recess and all the other.
Still have that
Amenities,
30-foot
yeah.
change.
All right, doors that serve the main public entrance to a building shall contain some form of glazing. Doors shall be integrated with part of the overall storefront system. Bay overhead doors are prohibited on the facades that are bordering or visible from the roadside. In cases where bay/overhead doors must be located on facades that are bordering or visible from roadway, one of the following two must apply. They must contain 20% glazing, or they must be of a color that's in keeping with the overall design of the building.
I talked to them probably about tweaking that language.
Right.
It says they're prohibited, and then it says, but if you are going to do them,
Right,
do this.
right. So we need to,
say they're
We can massage that a
we'll
little bit.
massage.
encouraged or something along that line.
Yeah.
The MacGyver flooring, they just put in a big open bay there. And I don't even know if that would apply because it's not on the road, but it's visible from the road.
And that was another question I had, buildings that are like catty-cornered a little
Right.
bit, that don't face directly on the road, or what about stuff that's one street off the road, like that building David did over there behind the park? I think he just renovated it. Does this only apply to stuff facing 319, or?
The way it's written right now is visible from any roadway.
Visible from any roadway?
If it's visible from the roadway,
What
is
if,
exactly how it's worded.
what if you have two road frontages, or even three? You gotta comply with that on all three corners?
Yes.
That'd be a little onerous.
So the language could be tweaked to, be specific that it only applies to arterial roadways or arterial and collector, maybe exempt local roadways. That is going to be y'all's judgment call.
I would be almost tempted to exempt locals, because like I said, if you have a corner lot and you have road frontage on three sides, you gotta comply with that 60% glazing on all three sides, right? It just seems.
Or at least the appearance thereof.
So you gotta make each three sides look like that's the front of the building.
And there are some things that we tried to work in here to allow, again, like the faux windows and doors. We tried to incorporate that to give, some relief and some option there for some flexibility on how that is accomplished, that 60% or whatever the percentage may end up being. And I think the same could be said for the bay doors. There are a lot of more architecturally pleasing options for bay doors versus your standard metal roll-up doors that folks are used to seeing. In the case of MacGyver, in the spirit of trying to, come in line with some architectural improvements, they did add an embellishment of the appearance of a barn door that covers their standard roll-up bay door. So, being able to allow some flexibility, I think, will help with that.
I'm really kind of leaning towards exempting local roads from this.
Okay.
Well, not
I could see this.
just local road, because, basically behind the park, a Clottney Street would be a local road, but if you do a Clottney Street and the other, the one on a Clottney Street should be included, okay? But if there's another street there, that one wouldn't be necessary. So the facing, for the major traffic, for the major part of the community, that road needs to be covered. The local roads on either side, I can see your point. Okay.
We don't
And we
care on
could-
Feely Way, which is a commercial subdivision. I don't think they should have necessarily to meet that standard.
I think what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is maybe, we could call out Crawfordville Highway specifically. At this point, that's the major arterial road that goes through the Crawfordville town plan, so we could, make these standards apply to, visibility from Crawfordville Highway.
We have, just thinking ahead in the future, we have development on MLK, right?
That's correct.
Commercial there. There's some commercial probably going to happen on 61.
So
Falcon
MLK,
Building
Cager, Posey, Wakulla, Aaron, those are all collector roadways.
That's what I say,
so-
exempt local, that would leave collectors and arterials.
Correct.
Now we can say visible from.
Visible from 319 and any arterial collector, right?
Yeah, and arterial would cover 319, so I would recommend just saying arterial
Arterial.
and collector roads.
Okay.
Because like the Talcum building, for example, if we just say 319, that wouldn't even apply to that, but if we say arterials and collectors, it would, because it fronts on Wakulla Aaron Road.
Correct.
I'm good with that.
Okay, that'll clean that up. Any other questions here? Just an example of a door. Storefronts, the use of storefront systems as a means of satisfying 60% open facade requirements is strongly encouraged. We got strongly encouraged there. So, design of storefront systems shall be integral to the overall design of the building. Example, storefront mullions aligning with other building elements such as water tables and window heads. And
Now-
this is an example of that.
When we say storefront, we're talking about the commercial glass,
Yes.
basically, and do we want to encourage that more? Do we want to encourage more stuff that looks like a house? Like the Talcum building certainly is not a storefront, but, apparently everybody thinks it's a great building, but it's not a storefront building at
You're
all.
right.
David's office isn't storefront.
I like the house concept.
I kind of like that too.
So, I think
We can word it so that we include.
kind of like a front porch thing,
Mhm.
so that people think that they're in a, because I hate we're starting to turn into Perry, okay? And so if we try to keep it as a house presentation along the highways and along our commercial, that would be good.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying about the
Yep.
storefront?
Yep, understand exactly what
I
you're
don't
saying.
want, a strip mall is a storefront
Right.
facade, right? And they certainly meet, the building across from the Walmart, for example, it meets the 60% requirement. It has a storefront facade, right? And it's just an ugly building.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of want to lean more towards the Talcum
Right.
concept. Well, I do anyway.
Display windows are to be an integral part of the storefront design. Size, shape, and division of these windows should be in keeping with that of the storefront display area. So this starts, and this goes along with what we were just talking about. Glazing, all glazing of the building's first floor shall be required to be clear glass. All other glazing shall be allowed to be either clear or tinted. Reflective glass is not permitted.
So if somebody has the sun shining, this is why I wanted you guys to be here, sun shining in their window, they can't tint them.
Right now, no.
I don't like that.
I just tinted the windows in my office.
Huh?
I just tinted the windows in my office.
That's why we wanted you to be here.
I
Mhm.
didn't like that.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Okay, then we'll take that, strike that.
Well, tinted or reflective? They're not the same, are they?
Tentative, I don't think we want mirror.
We got, well, that reflective, this is more mirrored, I'm sorry. This is,
Yeah.
reflective is more mirrored.
Tinted is different.
Yeah,
I'd strike the
I'm
tentative.
sorry, I said that wrong, right,
But I wouldn't want reflective glass, but tinted is,
yeah.
see, you can have, well,
Tinted too, because you could actually have those new Coke and Pepsi tinted things, so
Right,
you definitely want to get those.
right.
but you don't want reflective, 'cause
Okay, so we're good with glazing, show clear or tinted, and then reflective is what we're, okay.
that's what it says.
Yeah,
What we got
Mhm.
right there.
yeah, that's what I said, that's what,
When that says all other, but not the front. All glazing on the building first floor shall be required to be clear. All other glazing clear or tinted. So that means the
The
first
front is
floor.
not tinted.
Yeah, the front couldn't be tinted
Right.
by that.
Yeah, we want to be able to tint.
we'll, yeah,
Okay.
our intent then is to allow it to be clear or
More
tinted.
energy efficient too.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
We love the environment, right, Chuck?
Can that door on the right-hand side be an open bay door?
Is that the concept that you're talking about? Summer could be an open bay door?
It
like
could,
it
yeah,
be?
you could, yes.
Mhm.
There are some out there
Yeah.
that would resemble that.
That would, oops, computer keeps wanting to skip on me. Materials, the use of high-quality materials that are compatible in quality, color, texture, finish, and size to those in the project area are strongly encouraged. The use of limestone is strongly encouraged, as this is a material most typically used historically. Wood mimicking materials would be encouraged. New and contrasting materials are encouraged. Examples, limestone base and metal panels. The bottom here is what's most important to me. Metal buildings that can be used as structural systems for new construction. However, a typical metal building system in which the exterior is 100% cladded with metal siding is not allowed. We're trying to get rid of the pre-engineered metal buildings. So,
Something like, I mean, Walgreens is a pre-engineered metal building.
yeah, but
But it does not give off the
AutoZone.
appearance of that.
right, yep. We're not prohibiting it. We're just trying to keep you from doing all the metal siding and everything that a cheap Butler building does.
You can make it, but you have to cover it with something else.
Right.
Some lipstick and mascara on it.
Materials, these are just some examples of materials there. But you can see exposed wood, storefront, stone paneling, metal roof, hardy board siding, brick veneer, just some examples. Oops, one too many. Roof forms, articulating and sloping roof forms which provide visual interest shall be required. Multiple roof planes are encouraged. Flat roofs are prohibited when visible from the road right away except for entry canopies, storage, mechanical equipment areas, those types of spaces there. Entry canopies that use the same material as the main roof are encouraged. And then again, we've got Talquin and the renderings when we were doing studies of the fire station is what's on the right there.
Now, let's go back to the flat roof thing. Walgreens obviously has a flat roof, but it doesn't look flat from the front.
The parapet walls.
The parapet
just like
up,
that.
so you don't
Parapet
see it.
walls. Okay.
Yeah.
And David's, your building's got a flat roof, right? So,
No.
okay, I'm sorry. That's right, it's a blue roof. So we just don't want to be able to see a flat
Right.
roof without,
Right.
Tractor Supply's got a flat roof.
Yep. But they're all,
I kind of like what they did with that doctor's office there across from Songbird, I think it is, right? Well, it was a flat roof, but they shingled it up to a certain point where it looks like a
yep,
roof.
yep, yep.
And in El Jalisco, the new building is a good example of that. It is a flat roof building, but they've added the parapet walls that give it the character of a more Spanish style theme, and you don't see that it's a flat roof.
Okay.
So they're allowed as long as they're covered.
That's correct, as long as they're
They don't
hidden.
look like a flat roof.
Right.
Entry awning and sidewalk coverings, the main public entry to the building shall be equipped with some form of covering to protect users of the building in the inclement weather. Entry covers are to serve as decorative elements and should help establish the main entrance to the building. Entry covers should spark visual interest. No entry cover should extend continuously along the entire length of the building, and if you're going to, we ask that you break it up, and the entrance awning or covering shall be separated either visually or physically from the other part.
So if I put a front porch on a building, okay, that went from one end to the other, that would not be allowed. Because that's basically an entry awning would be a front porch, okay? And so you're saying I couldn't have a front porch, right?
No, I'm saying an entry,
If you're just talking about an awning.
right,
And not,
right. I'm going to allow you to do front porch.
Awning is not supported from underneath,
Right.
right? It just hangs off the building.
And typically on a front porch, you're going to, at the center, somewhere where the entry is, you're probably going to break it up and do a little something there too, so.
yeah, it says sidewalk covering, and so I'm going, a front porch has a covered sidewalk, and so it's.
Right.
And one thing, Greg, on this I was wondering about is, how is Summer going to enforce that it should spark visual interest, right, Summer? You got to think about people turning in site plans and building plans, and is Summer going to say this doesn't spark
This
visual
doesn't
interest?
spark my interest though.
Is there any more something concrete to
Let us-
just take that out?
I was going to say, let us look at it. If not, we'll strike it.
Because all the stuff that's real subjective makes it really hard.
That's
to staff,
exactly right.
And it makes people
Agreed.
that come in to get a permit argue with them. 'Cause
There
they say,
are-
This is visually interesting.
There are a lot of subjective parts and pieces we didn't try to approach at this point. It's something you'll grow into. Yep. All right.
Yeah, but we have to have something in there to get across the point. We want
Yeah.
something.
But we also have to be
Right.
able to enforce it.
Right. So we need,
And these were just some examples of what we were anticipating. So. Streetscapes, elements, lighting. So we were looking at the lighting here. The street lighting should be both pedestrian scale and roadway scale. All plazas, public areas should be lit well. Building signage should be located over entrances that is lit. Parking lots should have adequate lighting. The use of LED fixtures is strongly encouraged, and downward-facing light fixtures should be used in areas bordering residential neighborhoods. So we're
why
looking at.
would we want LEDs in all required? Because it's better lighting, it's cheaper,
We
it's
can.
less- more fuel efficient. I mean,
We can look at that.
what's the downside of, I'm making it the required, but it's replacing everything else.
Right, right. We just haven't done it yet. So,
I mean, if everything you said is true, that it's cheaper up front,
I think the bulbs are more expensive, but their energy savings and their, the length they last makes them cheaper in the long term.
I don't know if I necessarily want to, let me think about that one.
in construction projects, we've,
Well, I understand long-term, it's probably going to be cheaper, because I got them in my house, but I don't know if I want to tell somebody they have to put LED
Well,
bulbs.
it doesn't have as much spillage as the other. And so when you're talking about a night sky and trying to keep, the spillage coming up to the neighboring community, people living around it, LEDs are much more effective at that.
I was going to say in large commercial projects, we've reached the point where when given the choice of LEDs or fluorescent, we're getting LEDs 100% of the time now, so.
Is there an example, like parking lot lighting, or where LED bulb would not be the choice? I mean, I like LED. I've switched my entire house to LED.
Yeah,
but
I can't think of one off the top of my head where it wouldn't be the choice. But we can certainly, have a conversation about this and come back.
Seems like to me that that's one thing that the industry got right, other than the compact fluorescents and.
Yep. Okay. Just some examples of streetscape lights. Street furniture, amenities such as public trash receptacles, benches, public drinking fountains, bicycle racks are strongly encouraged. Allowing the use of such amenities can be used as a means to nullify other requirements listed in these guidelines. And all it give you an opportunity. We had some conversation about this. It give you perhaps credit towards something else.
But it's not
defined.
delineated, no, it's not defined. That's why I said it's a work in progress.
Right.
But it kind of like in our Crawfordville town plan, if you have bicycle parking, you can eliminate some of your parking spaces.
You're along the right idea, but that's not quite how the bicycle parking is written into the code.
I'm
What
saying,
Put some
just an
benches in there and
example.
get rid of the 60% rule.
There you go.
60%.
this would allow for some mitigating factors if you were unable to accomplish something that's more restrictive in here through your design of your building. You could provide some pedestrian amenities that we don't currently have or require folks to put in, like park benches, public trash cans, that sort of thing.
That would just be at your discretion of approving, you think that's.
Right,
Right now.
so that would be a negotiation between, the department and the developer.
I like options.
Okay. Sidewalks and paving, all paving materials and sidewalks shall meet ADA, of course. Concrete utilized for paving or sidewalks shall have a broom finish, rock salt, or other improved textural finish. Pavers shall be utilized to identify accent, pedestrian walkways, and seating areas if required by the intended use of the building.
Do we need to put the ADA statement in there? Isn't that required by
It's
business?
required. It's required. We could waive that. So, yeah, Clyde picked that up over there. All right. Just some examples of trash can receptacles and decorative type enclosures. Accessory structures. Structures that are not intended for public use or are necessary to the main building shall be deemed accessory structures. Dumpster enclosures, mechanical yards, those type of structures. Accessory structures are prohibited from being on the front of the building. If possible, they should not be visible from the roadway. Design of accessory structures should be that of the main building which it serves or screened from visibility.
This is a good example of what Clay Bozeman built, right? He built an accessory structure behind that house
Correct.
to store stuff in.
But it matches the house.
Well,
Well, it's color-wise, you know.
it's a cheap metal building.
Yeah.
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 No offense to Clay, but I just wonder how this would affect him. The main building which design shall be that of the main building which it serves or screened from, and it's certainly not, it doesn't meet the design of the building it serves, because, you know, the old building was a house. He just built this, it's just there's not a window in the thing, right? It's
No.
just a square building with a roll-up door,
Mhm.
and you can see it from the street.
Yep.
I just don't know how that would have affected him.
But he could have put a few shrubs along the edge and hid it from the road, because you only see it from the one direction.
He actually fronts on two roads, right?
Well, he does not, he is visible from Mimosa Street, but there's actually a residential property directly behind his. There is some additional landscaping that him and I discussed as some mitigating factors that he put in to help disguise that. It's not going to fully disguise that bay door from being visible from 319 because of the height of that structure, and obviously it had to be accessible for him to be able to pull his, you know, materials and equipment in and out of as well. So it gets a little bit tricky when you're, you know, talking, gosh, what is that? Probably a 14-foot eave at least.
Yeah, but if you had some structure, some shrubs or something there, it would do a lot to hide that entry.
Or he could have tried to make it match the house, right?
We had a conversation about the color.
Yeah, if you go back to the overhead door page, it says you can't just use a regular manufacturing color. It has to match the house. So if you want the gray building against the blue and white house, it doesn't match. So
It's the same family, maybe, he thought.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of real examples.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is going to affect people. It's not just, you know, we're just up here talking and laughing and joking. Somebody's going to have to comply with these rules.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And we don't want to shut down development because of it.
The whole idea is it's screened from visibility.
But I don't want to make it where Clay could not have expanded his business because of architectural standards. That's the point I'm getting at.
Right.
Or have to spend 3 times as much on a building to comply with architectural
Right.
standards.
That's what I'm curious if, and I know it depends on the building material, but just if there's a general ballpark, are we adding 10% of the cost, 2% of the cost? I mean, I don't.
Right.
Clay's building probably would have, I don't know, double the cost of the building, of the accessory structure, when you have to start adding hardy board to it or whatever, windows, the glazing to meet the architectural requirements. So
That's going to be a barrier to a lot of people.
we need to
especially-
think real carefully about, you know, especially accessory structures for an existing, if David's got that little house he converted, if he wants to add something to store Rhonda's mowing equipment or something, I don't know, whatever, how's that going to affect them being able to expand their business? Not that they need to, you know what I mean?
And for an accessory structure, if it's not visible from the roadway, then there again, there's not an issue if it's not something that's visible. So if he were to put a, you know, 10 by 10 shed and lawn shed in the backyard of his office facility, that would not be visible from the right of way. So it's a moot point.
But if he puts it on the side of that, what would it have to look like? Let's use
If he
maybe-
puts it on the side, then, well, in this, it says it can't be visible if possible from the roadway. So, I mean, that's something we need to hash out. Do we want to go back to the arterial and collector road visibility language on that? You know, these, I mean,
This only in the Crawfordville Town Plan?
this
too?
is only in the town
We're thinking about
plan.
expanding that too, right? 'Cause I want to go back to Rusty Pyatt's building he just built over there on MLK. That would comply with this if it was in the town plan, right?
it would be subject to these requirements.
And
If
that would
adopted.
add a lot of expense to, a building. He'd have to build something. Is the new fire station in compliance with this code?
It is, it hasn't been, we haven't analyzed all the facets of the fire station. We did try to dress it up a little bit as much as David
I know
wanted
Trice Lane
to beat me over that,
Office
but,
certainly wouldn't be in compliance.
yeah, well, that's a whole different critter there, that building.
But, you understand what I'm saying? We need to, maybe we could restrict this to only the core. We have several districts in the Crawford Town Plan, right?
There's the core district, and then there's the overall town plan area. So this could be designed to only apply to the core district area.
What core district goes from where to where?
Roughly right now, it is from Trice Lane to just a little bit south of where we're at today.
Probably needs to go further than that, but I wouldn't mind this going from here up to, East Ivan or whatever.
Staff is on another issue. Staff is working on an update to the Crawfordville Town Plan, which would include some proposed changes in the boundaries, both to the overall plan area and the core district, but
But you know what I mean?
that's coming back later.
I don't want to apply this to like where Rusty's office is, because that's not, people driving through our area, getting a sense of place, aren't going to be driving past Rusty.
And we can limit this to the core district if that's the board's will.
That's what I'm leaning towards.
Probably a good start.
It's
An expanded core.
Yeah, you can
Stick your
always,
toe in,
'cause I
stick your
wanna
toe
make
in the
sure
water
it's
with
in
the
our-
standards.
The commercial flow.
big
with
thing is
coming
people-
through. People coming through.
Driving through, right. And people driving home have something they're proud to
Right.
drive by to get to their house.
Right.
That's important too. Not just the people going to the beach, but, people want to have a sense of pride that, hey, I'm proud I live in Crawfordville.
It's a good-looking community.
Yeah. And I think that should extend from the Walmart south down through Gulf Coast.
But what about the cost? Would Tiger Rock have built if the cost would have been double?
I don't think it would have been doubled in his case.
I don't think
Brand new
so.
building.
Mhm.
It's a brand new building, it's just.
Clay's building was so cheap, that's why I said it would have probably been double. But Tiger Rock has a lot of embellishments on it, and I think the only thing he would have really had is add a few things
Right, to the end.
that's facing the highway. Which probably wouldn't.
Also, it doesn't have any covering over the doors, it's just a flat wall. You're talking about a metal door, metal building, a flat metal building, well, it's not metal, but it sure is a flat building. It's,
And, at some point, we don't have our hat in our hands anymore. If you don't want to, meet our rules, and we all agree what the rules are, then don't come. Right? Just put it like that.
I don't want to say that.
Well, we're not going to just get rid of all rules because we want anybody and everybody to come open a business down here either.
We talk all the time about jobs and keeping
That's
our
right.
kids here and not having to go elsewhere.
that's true, but if the person's coming here and they don't want to follow our rules, do they really want to,
It's a balance. It's a
well,
balance.
do they really want to enhance our community? Okay, are they just here to profit from our community?
They find a way.
News for you, every business is here for profit. They're not here because of the goodness of their heart just to create jobs. They're here to create money, and the byproduct of that is creating jobs.
I'm not saying we want to go this far, but obviously when they built up in Bradfordville, they had to meet a lot tougher standards than we have here. And, Walmart did it, right? They really embellished that Walmart in Bradfordville. So
Yeah.
if we can hold their feet to the fire, we got to live with these buildings the rest of our lives, So.
And I will
I'm not
say,
saying tell people to go pound rocks, but
Randy makes a good point, though, that there are a lot of communities that have very restrictive architectural standards, and that doesn't stop businesses from coming. And a lot of those corporate businesses like Walmart, Publix, and even these fast food chains that we all love so much, are accustomed to adhering to those design standards in some
Correct.
form or fashion.
we had
There's a lot worse.
we didn't have the landscape ordinance a few years ago. Jessica, would you not have built your building if it were? I know you probably pretty sore about landscape ordinance, but
I would have done it slightly different, but the landscaping wasn't as astronomical. It was just frustrating to follow the exact rules and not just do it.
it didn't say you didn't just say to hell with it, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna open an office because of them. Heather, these starbursts are all bad.
Yeah, they kinda go.
FYI.
All right.
Okay.
Utilities were proposed, we'd like to go underground. Mechanical equipment shall be contained. Structures, no satellite dishes exposed to the, yep.
It would be my dream for downtown Crawford to have all underground utilities, but Calvin's and Progress is never going to do that.
Sure, sure. Loading docks, get them around where you can't see them, not at street access, screen them where needed. Dumpsters at the rear of the building, and again, in screened structures. Use of rollout trash receptacles in lieu of dumpsters is strongly encouraged. So.
And is there any way we can build something in there to keep the buzzards away? Someone remember them? Never forget the McDonald's dumpster, 20 buzzards.
And it's not just McDonald's. We get a number of complaints in code enforcement about buzzards. Buzzards on cell towers, buzzards in dumpsters,
Seagulls,
buzzards
too.
landing on roofs, and
Simply
that
the
is
buzzards.
not something that we can regulate.
Well, we could regulate on dumpsters that are going to have food in them, right?
Right.
At least say that you got to keep the lid closed,
Mm-hmm.
you can't have anything overflowing.
And the health department does regulate that. So when we have, I mean, we do have a couple restaurants every once in a while, things get out of hand, and we do work with the health department on those issues.
So
So
if you,
yeah, we've had some other ones too.
if you have the dumpster, buzzard problem, that means you're not keeping your dumpster closed. And so there's a problem there automatically.
Nothing screams anti-sense of place than a nasty buzzard in a dumpster.
Yes.
Bring the 4-H gun club out there.
I'm with you, brother.
Apparently, they're actually protected species. I recently learned.
Don't tell Chris Beatty you just said that.
Yeah.
And that is it. So we will take everything under advisement, get with Summer, and update it and get it back to you.
Jessica, what do y'all got to say? David? Thoughts?
Yeah.
Jerry, I know you got something to say.
Yes, I have something to say. Good.
Speak away, man.
Come on, I'll turn it over to you.
I got my pen and paper a little bit late there, but I have built 5 strip centers, we'll call them, but I call them shopping centers. And they were each between 15 and 25 stores. And each of them had a 20-foot spacing for tenants. One of the things you had was the interruption of the continuous at 30 feet. Joe, let's say Joe, his building is going to be 45 feet. You can't interrupt his building. So each unit, between units, could have a,
Are you talking about a build-out, Jerry, of a shell? Or are you talking about
the front. We were breaking it up horizontally, and if we had it at 30 feet, we could give a range or a maximum.
well, it has to be between each individual tenant. You can break it up. One tenant may only be, all of my tenants, well, most of them are 20 feet. But if somebody has 45 feet, you can't break him up.
Like, let's take the building across the Walmart, for example, the Maurice's. It spans more than 30 feet, but I think the facade still has some, you can still,
just jog the.
you don't have to put your partition walls every 30 feet. You just have, and it only requires a 6-inch change, right?
The outside appearance.
Just the outside appearance, so you could still put your party walls wherever you want to
Okay.
on the
All right.
inside for a build-out. That's why I was asking.
I like basically everything you've got here. I've always built with hardy board. I use parapet walls instead of, you don't see a flat wall. It's awful to see a sloping flat wall. Tinted storefront glass, because that's important where you're facing east or west. The sun will just kill you if you don't have that tinted glass. I use a 6-foot sidewalk for pedestrians. You are talking about having recessed storefronts. That's expensive.
Sure.
And I haven't seen one of those around here.
Well, even in his presentation, they were not there. Well, some of them were and some were. I'm not necessarily in favor of that. If you build a 6-foot sidewalk, you have room for those folks to open the door.
And it says
so
it's
forth.
encouraged, not required, right?
I believe it was encouraged.
I like the word
It's
encourage.
not mandated.
I was gonna say, we can clean that up.
But I go back to the building across from Walmart, they don't have recessed entrances.
But if you've got a 6-foot or wider sidewalk, then you've got plenty of room to swing.
Yeah.
But we still want some kind of cover
Yes.
on that sidewalk.
Well, you don't have to have 6 foot of cover, but you can have 4 foot of cover on the
That's
sidewalk.
fine, but we want it to look like it's a porch so that people can get out of their car
I-
and get out of the weather.
I agree with you, and I hope this plan has included some sort of slope awning instead of a flat awning. A flat awning is quick to build and easy. A sloping awning, the best example I know of what you're talking about is across from Sam's on Capitol Circle. There's a little shopping center there that's broken
Got
up.
built, right?
It's really, really neat, and my wife says I should build that way instead of straight down the road, because it's very attractive. I use 10 foot instead of 8 foot on the parking spaces. I use 10 foot. And instead of 20 feet between the back of the cars, I use 25, because the ease of people moving around.
This addressed parking though, did it? Parking size?
No, he didn't.
Nor landscape, right?
Sometimes you don't have space for that. But Costco has 10-foot spacing, and you can pull in and out really easy.
Yeah.
And you don't bang your car doors up.
You got a big truck or an SUV, some of these new parking spots are hard to get in.
Our standard is
Some of your
County.
big trucks.
For standard parking spaces, it's minimum 9 foot wide.
One thing that's,
Gary, your shirt's rubbing the microphone.
Just lift it up a little bit. Your microphone.
Just pick the mic up a little bit.
Do it for him, David.
There you go.
that comes from not being able to hear.
Yes. We remember you couldn't even hear your own phone ringing during the
The
meeting.
county would have had to supply me with some sort of hearing if I'd stayed on the board, because I was getting where I couldn't hear anything. You've heard the deal, you can't hear it thunder. Well, without my hearing aids today, they went out and I couldn't hear it thunder. But I'm sorry, I talk low because I hear so well. You mentioned pavers on the front. You can print pavers in concrete, so you can use printed pavers. Printed pavers, okay. I've had 2 contracts recently. Summer killed them, but
What?
they fell away. Aldi.
That was
had
not my
designed-
fault.
Aldi had designed a building up next to Walmart, and they're a large national shopping center. Their building was facing the service station with a side, so they would not be able to put a facade on the side of that building. They just couldn't do that. I know what you're talking about. Their front was going to be facing Mike Stewart Boulevard.
But one side of the building would be facing 319, right?
One side of it would, but that's a dead side.
But it would still have to comply with the rule.
They could do some faux windows or something.
They'd have to dress it up.
Yeah, as long as, they could use the false windows. Yeah, that's very important. And I had a design for Publix on another 10 acres, and they were the same way. They were not facing 319, but they would not want to put active windows on that side.
So how did I kill those?
Well, let's not get into that.
Pardon? Yeah, you killed that one. I don't think you killed that one. That one just went away. One thing that's always bothered me is that box signs above your facade of your business. I like the individual lettered and lighted signs. Or you don't follow me?
The
You
dash
got
path.
a
Just giving
box-
you a blank stare.
you got a box sign that looks like a metal building
I don't want to do this.
with letters that are just printed on the sign. If you're going to do what you're looking at here, if you want to make it nice and attractive, have individual lettered signs that are lit. You follow me?
Not backlit, you're saying? It would be,
It would be over the entrance
Over
of
the
your
entrance to each
business.
Like Walmart has a W-A-L, they don't just have a big sign that somebody wrote Walmart on it.
right.
And I don't know how that would have,
You could have individual letters that are lit on your whatever,
I see what you're,
or if you use a sign,
Your sign has individual letters, right?
Well, some of them, you'll see it all over Tallahassee, and it's just because the developer has mandates that each sign has exactly what you.
Exactly.
You
Your
have to-
fonts are different for each business.
You got one box here,
Right.
one box here.
I will say that that is not actually written into our sign ordinance, but staff does encourage folks to do that when they're designing their signs, because especially in Crawfordville, we have the limited square footage. So if they have this, 4x8 square box sign, that
Lot of
covers
dead
the
space.
entire face.
Yeah.
They can reduce that and actually have a little bit larger sign if they do the die-cast letters and just calculate that
Rockies
square
did
footage.
that, right? With individual
Correct.
letters.
That's correct.
it's more expensive, but it's tremendously more attractive. It's,
David, you agree?
I feel with-
pardon?
I totally agree.
Jessica?
Yeah. Yeah,
Dallas?
having a,
I mean, we need, if we like it, we need to have Greg put it in there, because it's not in there right now, right?
if
Well, that
it's,
would be in our sign
That would be
ordinance.
our sign ordinance.
I don't want to mess that daggum sign ordinance.
I
But we
don't
could put
really
it in the
either.
architectural standard, couldn't we?
I guess it could be specific just to this area.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to,
For this area.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
if you,
I think we'd still have to amend the sign ordinance too, so whatever you guys want to do, my favorite ordinance
It's
to
stricter
write.
than the sign ordinance, right?
It's stricter than the sign ordinance, why would you have to, and it's just for the town plan.
No, the square footage would still apply, everything would still be the same, but they just say in the Crawfordville Town Plan, you have to have individual letters. Summer?
if you don't mandate that, if that's not mandated in
I mean,
the rules,
I,
then
On
basically,
the building,
Correct,
on the building, not.
on the building.
Not on the street.
we could probably get away with it without doing the ordinance.
I'm trying to
but-
think of an example.
I need to look at the actual language of the ordinance.
All right, well, you understand. This is not the sign out at the road, this is the sign on the building, right?
if you don't mandate that,
Like Myra Jeans, for example, would need individual letters for M, Y,
I think the box signs.
instead of just a box
Mm-hmm.
sign,
Yeah.
if it were built today. I mean, it's not retroactive, obviously.
The buildings that are already there's not much
Right.
you can do about that. But the new ones coming down, most of those people are going to be large corporate or franchise businesses. Very difficult for the small individual to build a building today. It just can't afford it. It's too much. But I guess that's about all I had.
And this was all started by Jerry, by the way. This was his idea. It really was. You wanted architectural standards when you were on the board.
I did. I wanted to get rid of metal storefronts.
Yeah. That's why we're here today, Jerry, it's because of you.
Summer, can I ask you a question? If somebody bought this old Ace Hardware building right across here, Tully's, used to be Tully's Hardware. Anyway, if somebody come in and bought that, 'cause that's an ugly building.
Is this the
right
Mike's
here.
Quick Cash?
No,
No, this,
stop.
I'm
Pet
sorry,
shop.
where the pet
Right.
shop is,
The
yeah,
old,
yes.
the old Ace.
The old
Yep.
Ace.
Anyway,
Sorry, that was before.
that's an ugly
I
building
don't
to me.
remember that.
So if I came in and bought it, I was a developer and I wanted to make it whatever, is this gonna apply, are they gonna have to bring it up to this
The
code?
sign or the architectural?
Both.
So, okay, so the way we've got the architectural standards, unless there was an addition to that would increase it by 50% or more, then the architectural standards would kick in. They'd have to do some retrofitting to that. If you bought the structure today and decided to make the entire thing a pet shop and it's basically change of use for some of those areas, then no, it would not be triggered.
See, that's where I'm at. I wanna see that improved, especially along our corridor for the downtown.
I think 4-lane and a 319 is gonna take that, because they won't have any parking. I mean, it's not gonna tear the building down, obviously, but all their parking is state right away.
I know, but I either want that building to go away or redesign it to where it looks like something that we want Crawfordville to look like, whatever that is.
I would be hesitant on including or capturing blanketly changes of use, because then you're going to get into these retrofits of your homes that are sitting on Oclotney Street that we're trying to encourage to convert to cottage commercial, like what was done recently with Mr. Harvey's site there that the title company is in. And so, that's something that we're trying to encourage, is that cottage commercial. So that change of use may, that may turn around and bite you,
Hopefully,
unintendedly.
I understand what you're saying, Mike. Hopefully it'll flush itself out. They finally tore down that old service station that was broke down, and but I do.
Newspaper thing, buildings over here, they tore those down.
The old florist shop.
The old floor shop, but like the Mike's Quick Cash, that ain't the most attractive building in the world either.
It's miserable.
And I think the 319 4-lane is going to take some of that, isn't it, David?
Well,
I know it's taking the board office, so.
I don't disagree with you, but I think if we could retroactively impose that, we're devaluing that building. Because if you're trying to sell that building and the buyer knows that they got to bring it all to these new standards, well, that's gonna knock the price down.
Hey, Walter and Beverly Lee, extremely
The
angry.
building's already lost its value because of the 319 widening, because it's not going to have parking, and where are you going to park? Okay, it's going to have to be torn down and
That one will probably solve itself.
yes.
Is-
But
is there
as
any-
far as, as it goes, we should have, there should be something, like when Sheriff built his facility here on 319, he did a great job dressing it up, and I'm hoping that there is some kind of requirement that when the change of use, they have to dress it up like he did.
yeah, don't just
I believe they own the property behind it, and so they can actually tear down their old rental homes right behind it and make that their parking.
Well, I was going to, along those notes, there's nothing in here that
Yeah,
encourages,
they do on it.
when they redeveloped Tallahassee,
Have the park in the back too. We'll lose half of
Right,
that.
sorry.
I didn't know where Ralph was talking, over there on, where the Buffalo Wings is at, there on Appalachia Parkway. What's that road goes by hospital?
Magnolia.
Magnolia. They made everybody front the building on the road and put the parking either on the side or behind them, and I kind of like that
Yeah.
look, but there's nothing in here that encourages that, is there?
And no, that was not included in this version based on the temperature and impression that I had received from commission discussion previously when we were directed to draft this, so.
Town's not set up for that. You notice all that stuff is common law.
No.
Majority of it is, they have some breaks, but majority of it is, we're not set up for that here. That'll be a tough, it's a nice idea, but it's tough to put out here. And
Well-
you do it right here in this little area, but all down, that gets very tough. And you also, you've got to worry about it getting ugly, because you're gonna have some older buildings set back, these modern buildings pushed, and you're gonna have a stagger.
Well, I was kind of thinking, like, if Waterloo ever wanted to redevelop the Ace Hardware, could he front those buildings with zero setback on the right-of-way, or,
Not sure why he would, but he could.
because there's just a lot of parking there, it's underutilized.
Well, he's gonna flip it.
Just move it.
That's
Or the
that's a
Winn-Dixie,
tough call,
Yeah.
that's a tough call when you're retro.
or the Winn-Dixie.
Well, I was going to say, if the Winn-Dixie parking lot were to redevelop with structures, zero lot lines, with shared parking in between new structures and the existing Winn-Dixie, that would be, an ideal situation for that
We have it in our
area.
Crawfordville town plan that somebody could front on the road, right?
Yes, and there are some provisions in the existing town plan ordinance that allow for that.
But we're a long way down the road to be designing something.
My point, back to what I was talking about with this building over here, if, say for instance, the old Ray Winkle store that was on the corner there, now that was a law office, right here on this
Yeah.
corner.
No, Coastwise Realty.
Yes. Look what they did with it. That was an old rundown, dilapidated building that somebody invested in, made it nice. If you go inside, it's nice. Same thing with Ron Mowry's, that's the old post office, right there. That was the original Crawfordville post office. Look what he did with it, just a simple
Mm-hmm.
plaster facade that changed the whole look of the building. That's what I'm talking about, is we try to make these, if somebody bought or changed the venue of that ugly Mike's Quick Cash building, you know, that's an eyesore. The color, that used to be the old Gulf Station. Somebody bought that, it would be nice if they made it match what's across the road and put a facade on it that made it look nice.
Paint it white, when it looked like an old gas station.
That's where the EDC could have a grant program to whoever buys it could, fix the
Well,
facade.
all I'm saying is that's the only way we're ever going to improve our town is if we slowly but surely require those buildings, as they're bought and reused, to make them, change them to what we think we want them to look like.
Do you have any ideas of how to incentivize someone to do that instead of making them?
Yeah, you could do that. It'd take the will of the board to vote to
Waive
do
permit fees or
waive
something.
permit fees, to waive,
Because I thought of that for a long,
let me finish, to waive taxes, to waive, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that. What do you call it? Intangible tax. Now, some people frown on that, but if you do it for a year or two, that makes an incentive for them to do it. And it kind of cuts the upfront costs, so.
because I was thinking about that specifically just around the courthouse. I'd always thought, well, what if we incentivize, if you're within, say, an eighth mile of the
Exactly.
courthouse, here's the incentives we'll have for you to come in here
Exactly.
and develop or redevelop and try to get some growth back in the center of town instead of everything
Right.
being north.
I agree.
I'd support that 100% if you come up with a plan.
Well, that's why we've got this architect here. He's the guy that's got to do it.
Well, I
don't
like-
know how to do that.
I like incentivizing people a lot more than mandating it, because if you come in, like you said, if they take that old Ace Hardware, they redevelop it, tear the rentals off, do the parking behind it, and create more jobs or whatever, and update the building, say, we'll waive your property tax, whatever, sewer tap fees or whatever, and incentivize it.
Hold on, there are obviously monetary incentives. There are ways to do property tax waivers, but it has to be, there. You guys did include that in your code. It has to be new or expanding businesses, and so there are requirements already for that. But you could do that. You could also do, you have a TIF ordinance, for example, that is on your books for, is it just the core area? I can't remember. For at least a portion of your town plan area. If you've never implemented that, if you implemented that, you could set aside funds that could be used to fund grants for these types of things to property owners.
So the statute you're talking, or the ordinance you're talking about was the 2012 one that Mike came up with, that I don't think anybody's ever used to this date, and it's a
Tax
it's an
incremental.
incentive program.
We did it one time with, well, I know we gave us a tax incentive to get ESG here.
Right.
We did the intangible taxes.
CSG.
CSG, I'm
Yep,
sorry,
yep.
CSG here.
Yep.
And then we talked with some others to do it, but
But then you had that
Yes, we
was,
did one in
that you put before
2012.
the voters, and the voters adopted,
yes.
but since then, are
I
you
don't
saying,
do anything with it.
It's authorized, it's on your books, you
Right.
could use
and
that.
we tie this to that, and specifically reference that if they will bring it up to these standards, not required to, but if they will, it'll trigger this ordinance.
Those ordinances that's done under state law, and it's tied to like economic development and new and expanding businesses, so it's going to depend on the characteristics of the business.
I like
that
the
are
idea
coming.
better of just saying, if you're gonna take a rundown building or eyesore building and on your own, make it look good, whatever, bring it up to our standards as if it was new construction, then we'll waive your property taxes for whatever time.
You're not going to be able to do that. That's what I'm telling you.
What could you waive then?
I mean, we could look at some of the other more county-controlled revenues, like if you had impact fee, you could look at things like that.
Do you like that for simplicity?
Yes,
Or
just
instead
because
of-
it's simple.
Instead of using what we already have in place that we've never used?
We couldn't
is
pay
the
their,
easiest thing.
let's just, don't get mad at me here, okay? But let's say their property bill was $5,000, we couldn't just pay it out of the general fund, pay their property taxes for them, instead of not waiving it?
Like waiving building permit fees, we know we have to offset it.
Yeah, you gotta, somebody pays it, but, and just do that up to the whatever amount they spent to improve it, and then the building's done. Basically, they didn't cost them anything, and it cost.
You'd be better, I mean, we could look at a system like that. You'd be better served to set it up as a sort of a grant program where there's uniform set of conditions that apply to everybody. You
And we
guys
fund
set
the grant
aside
from
a
general
set amount of money
Yeah.
that's available
fund it
so you
every
don't
year.
get crazy.
That's fine. That's fine with me.
Grant from general revenue.
So if you're within like whatever an eighth mile of the courthouse, we'll have this quote-unquote grant program that we'll fund. And,
And I would tie it to building improvements, not to their property taxes.
yeah, that's fine. Forget about property taxes. But say, if you're willing to bring it up to architectural standards, if it's an existing building, maybe you qualify for this grant, maybe pay 80% of it, 90, you won't have to pay all of it.
Why couldn't it apply to intangible taxes? Is that bad? I'm just asking. I don't understand.
I don't know how intangible
I mean,
tax.
you probably did it where you guys paid those on their behalf.
We just didn't charge them any intangible tax. I don't know how we did it, but that was years and years ago, and I don't know.
That was a
Yeah,
big
and I
thing.
don't know how you did it either. I don't want to
I don't know
comment
how
on
that
We
that.
weren't here then.
Apply to the old ACE, so Mike,
All I want to do is get
I understand.
this area to look, I mean, it's better now since we tore down a couple buildings, and I got beat up by the Historical Society, but at the end of the day, they were unsafe, and now we've got some eyesores that still need to go away, and I don't want to see them tear down the buildings, because they took an old Ray Winkle store that was there for 200 years, and look what it looks like now. It's nice.
I like the incentive program with the
And
grant.
if we can, yes.
Grant program might work.
While I'm not trying to detract from that, since the CSG, governmental accounting standards now requires me to identify all tax incentive programs and list it in your annual financial statements. So just know that whatever you do, it will be found there as well, so that public will have access to it.
Well, I mean,
I'm not saying let's go do something that's wrong. If that's what you're implying, then
No.
no.
No, the grant program, I can see
The
as funding a
simplest.
grant program that people, if they want to do it, then they can apply, and if they've brought it up to a standard that, the community that we like as a board, we give them some type of grant. How
Make
can
it
be
make it a
beneficial?
cost reimbursement grant, so they'll go ahead and do the work, have it approved, and then
Have it approved, then do the work.
don't just give somebody money and say, go, I want
Need to
to.
define the area.
Yeah,
Not
that's
down-
what I said.
Not down to an eighth of a mile, it needs to be this street to this street to this street.
That's
agree.
fine.
Could
Pull
we,
an errand to the courthouse.
could we not get in the weeds to specific building costs, but say, if you come up to these standards, we have a grant, and you can apply for up to $15,000 grant, or some
Whatever
cap,
it is, yeah.
whatever it may be. That way, we're not getting into, all we care about is Summer's going to certify, and the building department's going to certify that it meets the standards. And then we don't have to get into, this is the cost, this is what they're doing, it's just,
But we don't want
tie it to
to.
taxes.
You don't want to exceed 100% of the cost.
No, it costs reimbursement, it'd be a reimbursable grant. And it might cost more than $15,000 to bring something up to these standards, especially when you got to cut block walls to put openings in. Of course, I guess you could do fake openings, but we're not going to resolve this here tonight anyway. I just thought it was a good,
But I think it would be beneficial to the community, and if you incentivize it,
Yep.
probably the only way you're going to get it done.
yeah, I agree.
That's exactly right.
I've seen some renderings of entering the town of Crawfordville that really look good, and I think it's important that whether you're on whatever, especially Main Street, Crawfordville, downtown Crawfordville, that you know when you're entering the town plan. So where would the entrance and the exit be? And maybe even on Martin Luther King, I'm just, an area, I mean, how are you going to define that?
The plan goes from East Ivan, right, down to Lost Creek.
Correct.
So theoretically, that's the boundary of Crawfordville.
So will you have some
Signage?
Gateway
little
signage.
gateway there that you know your entrance? Because what I see happening is people, when they enter those kind of gateways, they automatically become more respectful.
Gotcha.
They slow down. They see people walking, and then it gives the people that live in the town a lot of pride of ownership and being in the town. And so they're going to want to do a lot of the things that you'll be asking them to do. But, it just, I think about the developments I see as I move around the state, and they have these magnificent gateways. you know, that you got to have some respect, getting into, when you come into that area. So, I don't know, it's got to be magnificent, but what I see.
At least delineate it.
What I see is so unattractive. Sometimes we'll, like a county line designation or a city designation, and so I don't know how we can do that. I've seen some nice renderings. I don't know if your firm did those or not, or the DOT did them. DOT or somebody. It wasn't
Where were you talking about mowing the grass from and to?
From Lost Creek Bridge to Walmart.
East Island, okay.
Or East Island, yeah.
And this may be good for, we
Oh, he's right.
like the idea about having a gateway. I mean, it's not that expensive to do, to say, welcome to Crawfordville, and now we actually have it delineated.
It ain't cheap either.
No, it's not cheap.
Well, I mean, we did the other 8x8 posts with the
Well,
refuse.
and there's a
people.
lot of things you can do to delineate your within your town to where you don't have to have a actual entry, but you subtly come into it and you notice the difference. I mean, street lights all of a sudden
Yeah,
are at
exactly.
a regular interval. You all of a sudden you pick up street trees and you pick up those things, and it takes itself back out when you get out Lost Creek.
I don't know if
So
it's letting it.
you don't have to have an official
Talk about
entry
your
feature.
mowing plan.
Huh?
We talk about your mowing
Mowing
plan.
plan, that's just a start.
David had brought up having a zero-turn mower mow the grass on the side of the roads from the Walmart down to Lost Creek, because
Consistent. So we have a
instead you got
consistent
tall
mowing
weeds
schedule.
everywhere, just to look better.
That'll help it, because now some business mows their grass and then it's that high on the other side of it. Consistency, and then we'll start picking that consistency up.
And I have no problem with the delineation, putting markers, especially on 319 coming south. Just something in the right-of-way saying, welcome to Crawfordville. Hey.
Where are you going?
Did you have to find your way here, David?
We'll get All right, Jessica, I know you're bubbling over.
Like my wife wear a name tag.
No, y'all did great. You've hit every topic I wanted to, but so can we go back to the lighting?
Jessica, do you mind coming? Thank you. So we can get you on the record.
Wonderful, I'm short. All right, so on the lighting, so are we talking about lighting on sidewalks? So if someone had to rebuild or redesign a building, they have to put a sidewalk with lighting in front of it?
We looked at that, we looked at several different types of lighting.
Mhm.
And yes, it was street front, sidewalk front lighting out there.
Two questions. Wouldn't we run into the problem with the lighting I picked wouldn't match the lighting my neighbors picked, and so on? It would be inconsistent, and then isn't the road going to widen and provide us with lighting and sidewalks in a few years?
So keep in mind that the lighting and the benches and the public trash receptacles, those are a part of a mitigation program, if you will. So if you weren't able to achieve a 60% facade opening and you could only, for whatever reason achieve 45%, then you could offer to provide these extra amenities. So this is not something that's actually required, like say a sidewalk or bicycle parking would be required for a new construction.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the lighting in the parking lots? Is that required for all?
That, I believe, didn't we write that as being encouraged in,
Okay,
yeah.
just encouraged. Okay,
Yeah.
that was my concern, because
So-
all business, I understand a storefront for someone opening at night definitely needs lighting, but someone like me, never
Would
going to be
not
open at night,
need that,
wouldn't make
correct.
sense.
And
Okay.
that's why we left that more as an encouraged thing, and that's something we would work with the developer on. So you're right, a business like yours, night lighting is not something that's of a concern, but something like the Winn-Dixie and a large parking lot would be, especially for safety reasons.
Right, okay. Only other thing is on the signage. So it says you needed a lighted sign on your building. Well, that gets difficult sometimes with the sign ordinance that's there with the amount of sign you have. So if you would make me put a sign on my building, which is 100 feet off the road, then I wouldn't be able to have the sign on the road that I have now, and no one would be able to read my sign. So I think that needs to be considered.
What does it say, Summer?
It doesn't say that you actually have to have signage on the building. If there is signage on the building, that it should be located over entrances and be lit.
Okay, so it's just if.
Yeah,
the sign.
if you have one, then it needs to be lit up and be over the entrance.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Y'all addressed everything else. Thank you.
Come on, Jerry.
Come right ahead.
I have a couple more. Longer I said here than what I've got.
Christmas lights, right?
I hope your plan addresses, and Firestone, Goodyear, Pep Boys, they love those bays facing the street. If the property allows it, it would be great if those bays did not face the street. So you've accommodated for that. Driving between businesses, like you have 4 or 5 individual businesses that are new, let's say. It would be nice if everybody could drive between, because you've got the offset from 319, so that I can go to your business and you can go on to the next one. That may already be there.
Yeah, I was going to say that's more of a site planning issue versus an architectural standard, and that's already included in the town plan for the interconnection of adjacent businesses.
We do
where
that on
it's feasible.
every one that comes through, Jerry.
Yeah, I have basically the 10 acres I have and Tractor Supply. That's an example. Can I?
There is a stub out there. They've actually parked a hay trailer in there right now, but as soon as you build something there, I'm going to have your engineers design a connection to that stub out, and I'm going to make them move the hay trailer.
So it's going to be on the front, though. It's not going to be stepped back. If my driveway is 30 feet off 319, let's say, I'll be able to drive 30 feet. I don't have to jog back to their whatever and come
Yes,
out.
actually, there are no provisions in the ordinance right now as to how that internet connection can be designed as far as setback from driveway connections or highways. And I would say that would be probably a very difficult thing for us to achieve, trying to, based on parcel configuration, existing roads, existing driveway connections. So I think we need to be able to be flexible and fluid with that. So the interconnection, again, when you go into the Tractor Supply, once you approach kind of the front door, it's going to be on the south side of that, next to their outdoor display area is where that interconnection is designed to be.
That's a long way back off the roadway, though. Is that not correct?
But it still meets the requirements of the code that requires the interconnection to be there. There is not a set standard currently in the ordinance for how far off of Crawfordville Highway or any other roadway that it would be.
Would that not defeat the purpose, though? Let's just say that I want to...
It's not as convenient as a service road like you see down Appalachia Parkway.
A service road's
but
what
that
I'm talking
interconnection is still there, so they would still be able to drive from Tractor Supply into your facility or vice versa without entering 319 at all.
Yeah, I think that we should all be able to use each other's service road without having to go. That defeats the purpose if I've got to go drive back in front of Tractor Supply to get back out on the highway. But interconnection between on service roads would
And
be
that's
important.
typically what we try to do, like we did right up here at the
Zaxby's,
Zaxby's, the
Cuban Mojo's,
Pep Boy
Pep
or
Boys.
O'Reilly's,
Yeah,
O'Reilly's.
all Taco Bell.
all that. You can go
And
between
what's
those.
the one right, the advanced, not, what's the crossing there? There's so many auto parts stores we got now.
I
It's hard to
know.
keep track of them.
Well,
Huh?
you have the savings.
No.
You have the savings and loan. You have the
Ameris Advance,
Mexican restaurant.
AutoZone, maybe?
David's.
Yeah.
We had them put an
AutoZone.
interconnect there too,
Yeah.
even though it's not, there's
Even
nothing
though,
to it.
yes, right.
All that.
And I hope at some point you never get to the point where you want to build the buildings on the street and have the parking behind.
I know, Jerry, you hate that.
That way you have two fronts. You got a front that nobody is using on the street, and you got to have a nice front on the back to invite people in. You have no place for your trash can.
Good point.
Anybody else? Go ahead. Come on up to the,
Glazing, I knew y'all,
come up to the microphone.
y'all see me pulling on my ears because I have an infected ear and my ear canal is stopped up and the only way I can hear is pull on my ear, so that's what that's all about. Anyway, the 60% glazing, I know y'all are going to address that, but, impact glass is very expensive.
So when you're talking about 60% of a facade being glass, you're talking about a lot of money as far as impact glass.
Doesn't necessarily have to be glass, right? It could be
The appearance of,
something dressed up,
Thereof.
you
Be
know.
glazing, right?
What about,
It'd have to be impact, wouldn't it?
No, it doesn't have to be impact.
It doesn't?
does like
Okay.
wainscoting, would that count towards this requirement, or is it, they gotta be 60%
Dallas, it's not
glass?
60% glass.
Okay. Glazing is glass, right?
Yes, sir.
And it
Is it-
says 60% of the facade's glazing.
And I said I wanted to look at that. I thought that was a little high.
We're rebuilding that.
Another thing too, it says that all glazing on the front of the building, including the door, has to be clear.
We just talked about that too.
Talked about that
Well,
too.
you know, there's some things I don't want to see from the street, like a tattoo parlor, you know? I don't want to walk by and be able to look in a tattoo parlor, so I don't want clear glass in a tattoo parlor, if you know what I mean.
What about a massage parlor?
Yeah.
So we need-
What do you want? Like,
Or, I mean, it could be a health clinic. Maybe somebody's going to a health clinic and they want to be
Wants two-way
anonymous. They don't want to
glass
be sitting
on
in the
those
weight
doors.
room and everybody walking down the street looking in the window. So that's my only comment.
Be a leopard colony in there or something.
All right.
okay.
Any other comments? Anything from the board?
I think this is a good workshop.
This was very good, Randy. Thank you very much.
It's a good help.
Whose idea was this?
Community conversation.
Whose idea was this?
Jerry's.
Jerry.
No, to have this workshop. That Summer said we didn't need.
All right. Entertain a motion to
Why do I
adjourn?
keep getting thrown under the bus today?
Run over several times.
Take my cars and go home.
Thank y'all for